started thinking how flattered we three are when you were spoilt for choice as to who to invite today that you ended up with this motley trio of humanity. When instead of the gorgeous Kate, you could have had the equally gorgeous but different Cherie Booth QC, a wonderful person. She just doesn't take a very good photograph. She is enormous fun, I have to tell you, Goosa, and she livens up nowhere. She could have been here today with her marvelous misery memoir, but no, we have Kate instead. On my right, instead of little Lord Levy, we have Edward Enfield, Harry's dad. I think we could have had Norma Levy's father, which would have been exotic and exciting. I assume in the case of Lord Levy, there's a sort of Nordic air that is assumed, rather like Prince Littler or gay Lord Hauser, or even Duke Ellington. I can't believe he's the real thing. When I see him, he reminds me of the late Mr. Teasy Weezy Raymond. It's a nostalgic reference, those who are riper years and are largely prepared by family traffic. And I am here, I suppose, in loco of Mr. John Prescott. I haven't brought you my bulimic diaries, no. What an unlikely candidate for pity he is. Though actually I've always rather admired him, John Prescott, the man who managed to use the English language like a Rubik's Cube. I'm very sympathetic towards problems because my mother is an educational psychologist. Indeed, she's the founder of the national charity that is known by the acronym DAM, which stands for Mothers Against Dyslexia. By all these baby people coming out of the woodwork and sort of doing in their new leader, because I was an MP and I tried to be loyal. I was a conservative, I was a loyal member of Parliament. I mean, when John Major became the leader of my party, to show my loyalty, overnight I went grey. That's the kind of instinctive, visceral loyalty I showed. And a few years later, when William Hague became the leader of my party, yes, again, overnight, to show my loyalty, I began to go bald. I was only grateful that Aaron Whittaker did not succeed in her. My wife is now hoping that after Boris's success, I'll begin to grow some hair again and go blonde. I am sounding slightly white, but that's a different matter altogether. I'm thrilled to be here. The reason we're here is that clearly Richard felt he needed something different. And what I'm bringing you is a traditional Victorian murder mystery. For me, a soothing afternoon is one spent, well, they say so, Kate, an afternoon like, and apparently an afternoon like this, spent with the beautiful people, you know, eating with the beautiful people, drinking with the beautiful people, sleeping, with a clear conscience in front of countdown, and then waking up and reading a murder mystery. A murder mystery. For me, when I read a murder mystery, I want snow falling directly outside the window, candling in a carpet. I want the Labrador snoring gently by the fire that's crackling and burning. I want a silver salver which is opened and reveals toasted tea cakes, proper tea cakes, oozing with cholesterol-free butter. That's the fantasy world in which I live. I've written the second in a series of murder mysteries set in the 1880s and 1890s, featuring Oscar Wilde and his world. And these came about because my two childhood heroes, well, the first of them was Sherlock Holmes. I was brought up in London. I lived in Baker Street, in a block of flats above Baker Street Underground Station known as Chiltern Court. You may know the block of flats. Literally, in the flat next door to us lived Huey Green. You remember Huey Green? Yep. If opportunity had knocked on a different door, who knows, I might have been Peaches Geldof's great uncle. Famous address in all literature, 221B Baker Street. But I was sent away from Baker Street to boarding school. I went to a school called Bedales. Kate and I had that in common. We were battalions. And where my best friend was a young actor, then aged 12 years of age, called Simon Goodell, no longer with us, sadly. And he, Simon, played Sherlock Holmes in a play that I'd written called A Study in Sherlock when he was 12, and he was definitive. I have to tell you, we know that Jeremy Brett was superb, but Simon Goodell, aged 12, smoking that little pipe, was for me absolutely incredible. But at this school, Bedales, on a Wednesday afternoon, I was sent down to the cottage in the grounds where lived the founder of the school, a man called John Badley. And I discovered, when I played Straddle with this old boy, he was born in 1863 and died in 1965, aged 102. I met him when he was 97 years of age. I discovered that this old boy had been a friend of Oscar Wilde. So I knew a friend of Oscar Wilde's. And because, when I was quite young, and this man was very old, he told me about Oscar Wilde. But because I was only 13 years of age, he didn't feel able to talk to me about the great scandal. I knew myself, even though I was 13, that something had befallen Oscar Wilde, but I didn't quite know why he'd been imprisoned in 1895, and this old boy didn't tell me. He simply gave me a picture of the most amazing, amusing, delightful, and brilliant person. One of the intriguing things I think about Oscar Wilde now is that we see him through the prism of his downfall. He is weighed down, Oscar Wilde, by that huge monolithic memorial to him at Père Lachaise Cemetery. We see this great, amusing, generous, delightful genius through dark glasses. We don't see him properly. And for me, the joy of discovering Oscar Wilde through a friend of his was that I discovered a man about whom I was only told that this was a family man. Married to Constance, Oscar Wilde's eldest son, Cyril, was a pupil at Bedales, and he just told me about the generosity, the wit of this man. And I said to Mr. Badley, sir, did Oscar Wilde ever give you any advice that you'd like to pass on? And Mr. Badley said to me, oh yes, young man, he told me murder, never commit murder. And I share this advice with you. Never commit murder. A gentleman should never do anything he cannot talk about at dinner. And so when I came to decide to write a series of murder mysteries, traditional murder mysteries, in the world that Kate has described so brilliantly, I wanted to be what I wanted to be. I know you people have, I wasn't a member of Parliament until 1997. I'm no longer a member of Parliament, of course, because the people spoke. In my case, they spoke in no uncertain terms. But I spent the last 10 years, while you have been enjoying Mr. Blair and Mr. Brown's Britain, I've been in Mr. Disraeli's Britain, Mr. Gladstone's Britain. I've been living in the world of the most extraordinary authors. And the new murder mystery I've written, Oscar Wilde and the Ring of Death, is set in a dining room in London with Oscar Wilde and a group of his friends, real people that he knew, like Bram Stoker, like Robert Louis Stevenson. Extraordinary people who are friends, Walter Sickert, of Oscar Wilde. And curiously, I checked today's date, it's the 13th of May. And I have to tell you that on the 13th of May, in 1884, Oscar Wilde sat down at a London club to dinner with 6 other writers. And I just want to tell you who these people were. Because there must have been something in the London fog in that time that inspired this generation of writers. At the top of the table was Oscar Wilde, sitting next to who created, of course, the myth that is Oscar Wilde, as well as that extraordinary portrait in the attic. Next to him is his friend, Arthur Conan Doyle. They were friends. That's the inspiration for my series of novels. Who created Sherlock Holmes? Next to him is Willie Hornman, the brother-in-law of Arthur Conan Doyle, who created Raffles, the gentleman cracksman. Next to him, in this circle of people on the 13th of May in 1884, is sitting, who is it? Next to him is Robert Louis Stevenson, who created Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Sitting next to him is Bram Stoker, there at Oscar's invitation because he is the general manager for Sir Henry Irving across at the Lyceum Theatre. He's been invited because Conan Doyle is hoping that Irving will consider playing Sherlock Holmes. That's why he's there. But of course, Bram Stoker is the man who later creates Dracula. And so we've got all these people sitting together. It's extraordinary. And who is sitting next to Oscar Wilde? We've had the man who creates Oscar Wilde. We've had the man who created Sherlock Holmes. We've had the man who created Raffles. The man who created Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Then the man who creates Dracula. And there's a young man, of course, sitting next to Oscar, the young Jeremy Barry. 6 men in one dining room, just 110 or so years ago. What was there in the atmosphere of London at that time? What I've tried to do in my series of murder mysteries is evoke that age and take you and Oscar Wilde and Conan Doyle through the streets of London, exploring that golden, brilliant, mysterious world with a flawed genius, because that is exactly what Oscar Wilde